December 16, 1944, 5:30 a.m. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The darkness explodes. German artillery slams into the frozen tree line, shells ripping through pine and snow with a sound like tearing metal. The ground convulses, foxholes collapse, radios scream with static and broken voices. For American infantrymen of the 28th Division, it feels like the world has cracked open beneath their boots. You can almost feel the cold, 20 below freezing, breath turning instantly to frost, fingers numb inside wet gloves. Somewhere in the smoke, a runner is shouting, but no one can hear him. Then the tanks come. Panthers and tigers emerge through the fog, black silhouettes grinding forward, where Allied intelligence said no major German force existed. This is not a raid. This is not a counterattack. This is the full weight of Hitler's last gamble, the Ardennes offensive. Within hours, American lines are folding. Entire regiments are pushed back or cut off. Roads clog with refugees, trucks, artillery pieces abandoned in ditches. German columns punch west, aiming straight for the Meuse River. At the center of the chaos sits a small Belgian town most Americans had never heard of before. Bastogne. 7 roads converge there, a spiderweb of supply routes controlling the entire region. Whoever holds Bastogne controls movement in the Ardennes. And by nightfall, German armor is racing toward it. 2 days later, December 18th, Bastogne is surrounded. Inside the perimeter, the men of the 101st Airborne dig into frozen earth with bayonets and helmet rims. They have little artillery. Ammunition is rationed. Medical supplies are already running out. Snow falls constantly, thick, quiet, merciless. Wounded men lie wrapped in parachute silk inside unheated barns. Medics work by flashlight. German loudspeakers broadcast offers of surrender through the trees. Outside the ring, the enemy tightens the noose. And far to the south, nearly 180 miles away, another man is listening. George S. Patton, Jr., Lieutenant General, Commander U.S. Third Army. He stands in a drafty headquarters in Nancy, France, staring at a situation map lit by bare bulbs. Red and blue pins mark the front. The German breakthrough is obvious now, a deep, dangerous bulge tearing into Allied lines. Most commanders are still trying to understand what's happening. Patton already knows. He doesn't pace. He doesn't shout. He studies the map like a chessboard. And then, quietly, he says something that makes his staff officers look up. "We're going north." One officer hesitates. "Sir, the entire army." Patton nods. The Third Army is facing east, driving toward Germany. Its fuel dumps, supply lines, artillery routes, everything is oriented forward. To turn it north would mean rotating 3 corps, 6 divisions, over 250,000 men, in the dead of winter, across ice-choked roads, while the enemy is advancing. No modern army has ever done that. Patton doesn't care. He turns from the map. "When they ask me," he says, "I want to be ready." The next morning, December 19th, senior Allied commanders gather in Verdun. The room is tense. Maps cover the walls. Cigarette smoke hangs thick in the air. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands at the head of the table. Reports are grim. German armor is advancing faster than expected. Bastogne may not hold. One by one, commanders speak cautious, measured, realistic. Then Eisenhower turns to Patton. "George," he asks, "what can you do?" Patton doesn't hesitate. He doesn't calculate. He doesn't hedge. He answers instantly. "I can attack in 3 days." The room goes silent. British liaison officers exchange looks. A few blink in disbelief. 3 days. To disengage an entire army. Pivot at 90 degrees. and drive it north into one of the worst winters Europe has seen in decades. Someone lets out a quiet laugh, not mocking, more stunned than anything. One British officer later recalled thinking, "The man must be mad." Patton notices. He meets Eisenhower's eyes. "When do you want me to start?" Here, what no one in that room knows. Patton has already done it. 3 days earlier, before permission, before orders, before the crisis was fully understood, he had quietly instructed his staff to prepare contingency plans for a northern turn. Route cards were drawn, fuel estimates calculated, traffic control units alerted. While others were still reacting, Patton was already moving. Now the order comes down officially. Relieve Bastogne. And the clock begins ticking. December 20th. Snowstorms hammer the roads. Visibility drops to nothing. Ice coats bridges. Military police stand at intersections directing endless columns of trucks, tanks, half-tracks, all trying to turn at once. Engines stall in the cold. Men sleep sitting upright inside vehicles. Some don't sleep at all. Convoys stretch for miles, headlights hooded, taillights dimmed to pinpricks. One wrong turn can snarl traffic for hours. German aircraft prowl whenever the weather breaks. Yet somehow the columns keep moving. Third Army doesn't stop. Not at night. Not in snow. Not under air attack. Patton's orders are brutal and simple. Drive. Inside Bastogne, the noose tightens. German infantry probe the perimeter daily. Artillery pounds the town relentlessly. Ammunition is dangerously low. On December 22nd, German officers approach under white flag, delivering a surrender demand. The American response is a single word: nuts. But bravado can't stop tanks. Every man inside Bastogne knows the truth. If relief doesn't come soon, they will be overrun. And now, somewhere on an icy road to the south, the lead elements of Patton's Third Army are pushing forward through the snow. Ahead of them lies the German 5th Panzer Army. Behind them lies disbelief. Because if Patton fails, Bastogne falls. And if Bastogne falls, the road to Antwerp opens. The war itself could change. The question no one dares say out loud, yet is simple. Can an army really turn this fast? Or is Patton driving straight into disaster? December 22nd, 1944. Somewhere on the frozen roads of Luxembourg. The temperature hasn't risen above 0 in days. Engines groan awake before dawn, coughing clouds of white vapor into the black morning. Men stomp their feet beside half-tracks, trying to force blood back into their toes. Rifles are slapped against palms, not for readiness, but to keep them from freezing solid. Then the order moves down the column. Move out. The Third Army begins to turn. Not symbolically. Not gradually. Physically. Entire divisions pivot north like a massive steel hinge. Tanks first, then artillery, then miles of supply trucks loaded with fuel, rations, and ammunition. Military police stand at road junctions holding glowing batons, shouting directions over the roar of engines. Every road is too narrow. Every bridge is iced. Every delay compounds the next. One stalled truck can halt a regiment. And German reconnaissance aircraft are watching. Patton is everywhere, or at least it feels that way. He drives forward in his command car, pearl-handled revolvers at his side, helmet pulled low, scarf snapping in the wind. He stops convoys personally. He screams at officers who hesitate. He praises drivers who push through. Don't stop for nothing, he tells them. Not sleep, not snow, not hell itself. Behind the language is math. Fuel consumption. March speed. Bridge tonnage. Patton knows exactly how many hours he has before Bastogne collapses. and every hour matters. The German command believes the Americans are finished. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt's staff estimates that any major Allied counterattack will take at least a week to organize, probably longer given the weather. They expect cautious probes. They expect delay. They do not expect Patton. On December 23rd, German commanders receive fragmentary reports of American movement to the south, confused sightings of armor heading the wrong direction. The reports are dismissed. It makes no sense. Inside Bastogne, the situation has turned desperate. Medical supplies are gone, surgeons operate without anesthetic, men burn furniture for heat, snow drifts through shattered windows. The sky remains gray and hostile, Allied aircraft grounded by weather. Each night German flares float overhead, bathing the lines in eerie white light. And each night the perimeter shrinks. General Anthony McAuliffe walks the lines in silence. He doesn't promise rescue. He just tells the men to hold. Somewhere beyond the trees, German engines idle. Waiting. December 24th, Christmas Eve. At Third Army headquarters, Patton gathers his officers. He knows something crucial is missing. Air support. Without it, his advancing spearheads could be crushed by German armor and artillery long before reaching Bastogne. Patton asks his chaplain, Colonel James O'Neill, for something unusual. A prayer. Not symbolic. Not ceremonial. A prayer for good weather. That night, Patton has it printed and distributed to every unit. Almighty and most merciful Father, we humbly beseech Thee, restrain these immoderate rains with which we have had to contend. Some men laugh. Others quietly fold the paper into their pockets. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. December 25th. Christmas morning. The clouds break. For the first time in days, sunlight cuts through the Ardennes sky. Within minutes, Allied aircraft roar overhead, P-47 Thunderbolts diving low, strafing German columns, bombing supply routes, shattering the siege from above. Inside Bastogne, men cheer weakly from foxholes. They are still surrounded, but now they are no longer blind. And far to the south, Patton sees the same sky. He smiles. Now we're cooking with gas, he mutters. His lead unit is the 4th Armored Division. At its front rides Combat Command Reserve under Brigadier General Hugh Gaffey, with Colonel Creighton Abrams pushing forward aggressively. Their orders are simple. Drive straight into the German southern flank. No pauses. No cautious probing. Just forward. The first resistance is immediate. German roadblocks erupt from the snow, anti-tank guns concealed behind hedgerows, Panzerfaust teams firing from farmhouses, artillery ranging the narrow roads. Sherman tanks burn. Men die. Columns detour around wreckage without stopping. Patton's instructions echo again. Keep moving. Abrams radios back grimly. Progress is slow. Patton responds with a single sentence. Get going. By December 26th, the fighting becomes brutal. Every village is defended. Every ridge costs blood. The Germans know Bastogne is the key, and now they realize something terrible. The Americans are not preparing to attack. They already are. German commanders begin shifting reserves south, but it's too late. The snow, the roads, the chaos of their own offensive traps them. Patton's spearhead keeps grinding forward. Hour by hour. Yard by yard. Then late in the afternoon, near a tiny village called Assenois, a radio message crackles through static. An American tank has broken through. The road ahead is open. Crews push forward cautiously. And then through the trees they see movement. Men in dirty white uniforms. Not German. American paratroopers, hands raised in disbelief. One tanker climbs from his hatch and shouts through the cold air. "Anybody here need help? The siege of Bastogne is broken." When word reaches Allied headquarters, disbelief ripples through the room. British liaison officers stare at the map. 72 hours. An entire army turned, driven, and delivered faster than anyone believed possible. One officer reportedly mutters, "I didn't think any army in the world could do that." But Patton isn't celebrating. He knows this isn't the end. Because breaking through is one thing. Holding the corridor is another fight entirely. And the Germans are already preparing their response. December 27, 1944. The road to Bastogne is open, barely. A narrow ribbon of ice and mud snakes through shattered villages and burned-out armor. On maps, it looks secure. On the ground, it's a death trap. German artillery immediately begins ranging the corridor. Shells crash into supply trucks. Ambulances skid into ditches. Snow turns pink where medics kneel too long. The men of the 4th Armored Division know the truth the moment they arrive. They didn't end the battle. They stepped into its most dangerous phase. Because now the Germans want that road back. Inside Bastogne, the paratroopers of the 101st Airborne barely recognize the men arriving to relieve them. Faces hollow, beards frozen stiff, eyes sunken from days without sleep. They shake hands anyway. Some men laugh, short, broken laughs that surprise even themselves. But there is no time for rest. German guns are already adjusting fire to the new American positions. The town remains under constant bombardment. And now Patton's forces must fight outward, not just inward. Patton arrives forward shortly after the breakthrough. He doesn't give speeches. He studies terrain. He asks how wide the corridor is. When told it's barely one road across in places, he nods grimly. "Then we'll make it wider." Orders flow immediately. Additional armor pushes north. Infantry fans out to seize high ground. Engineers work under fire to reinforce bridges and clear wreckage. Every hour counts. If the Germans cut the road again, Bastogne becomes a trap, this time with even more Americans inside. German commanders react with fury. They had believed the American relief attempt impossible. Now they are determined to erase it. Elements of the 2nd Panzer Division and Panzer Lehr are ordered to counterattack. They move at night, silently, through woods Americans thought were clear. On December 30th, German armor smashes into the corridor near Le Trebois. Panthers punch through American lines. Anti-tank guns fire at point-blank range. Entire companies are overrun before dawn. The road flickers on the edge of collapse. For hours, the situation is unclear. Reports contradict each other. Radios fail. Snowstorms blind observation aircraft. At 3rd Army headquarters, Patton stands over his map again. He doesn't slam his fist. He doesn't shout. He simply says, "Commit the reserves." Everything he has left. The fighting that follows is some of the fiercest of the entire war. Sherman's dual Panthers across frozen fields at 50 yards. Infantry charges through waist-deep snow. Artillery fires until barrels glow red in the night. Men collapse from exhaustion as often as from wounds. But slowly, painfully, the corridor widens. Hill by hill, farm by farm, the German counterattacks lose momentum. They have burned their last strength trying to crush Patton's turn. By early January 1945, Bastogne is no longer isolated. Supplies pour in. The wounded are evacuated. The lines stabilize. And for the first time since December 16th, the German offensive stalls completely. Hitler's last gamble has failed. Only then do the Allied commanders fully grasp what has happened. Patton did not simply relieve Bastogne. He shattered the timetable of the entire German offensive. By forcing the Germans to divert armor south, he weakened their push toward the Meuse. By moving faster than expected, he denied them momentum, the lifeblood of blitzkrieg. The Ardennes bulge begins to shrink. The initiative returns to the Allies. Weeks later, British officers who once doubted the promise quietly admit what they witnessed. Not bravado, not luck. Preparation executed with ruthless speed. Patton had not guessed. He had anticipated. And when the moment came, he moved before history could close the door. In the frozen forests of Belgium, thousands of men would never know the full scope of what they had been part of. They only knew the cold, the fear, the road that had to stay open. But from that road came something rare in war. A moment where disbelief turned into awe, where an impossible order became reality, where an army did what every rule said it could not. The war would continue for months. More blood would follow. But from that winter onward, one lesson burned into every Allied command briefing and every German after-action report alike. If Patton was on the map, time itself became dangerous.